Hey guys, we'll be doing the Bounty Hunter machine from Hack the Box. This is an easy machine, but I still really want to delve into this. For those who are just starting to do pen testing or maybe just thinking about it. So first, we're going to create a VPN to the Hack the Box network. If you've noticed that it is a private IP address. With that, we cannot simply just connect to the machine without being on that local area network. So once you download that VPN file, you can find it in your downloads folder. So we can change our directory here. There you go. Then we're going to create the tunnel and whatever file name you have. Enter your password. Once a tunnel has been established, you will see the initialization sequence completed at the bottom. That means you are connected. To test basic connectivity to that machine, we can use ping and then the IP address of Bounty Hunter. You should have the latency, the time to live. Cancel this. We're going to check our IP address, fconfig, and then this would be our IP address on the local network. This is the tunnel, 10.10.14.94. That's why we now have connectivity to that machine. Next thing I'm going to do is create our notes, documents, and then I'm going to use Nano. You could use other text editors, that would be fine. Control-Shift-T for new tab, and then we're going to do basic scanning. We're going to use nmap in order to scan for open ports. This default script. Also return the versions and the IP address of the machine. So while we're waiting, we're just going to update our notes. So our target will be 10.10.11.100. Hopefully we have an output. It's gonna Control-Shift-T again, create new tab. So what the nmap does is basically just scan open ports and then provide you the output. That's why we now have two open ports for that machine, port 22 and port 80. Let me first copy this into our notes. Okay. So these are standard ports or well-known ports. You have port 22 for SSH, port 80 for HTTP. Now, with the port 80, this is used for websites or web servers. You could use this actually to go to the browser and try to check the Bounty Hunter website. Once you open your Mozilla Firefox, just enter the IP address of Bounty Hunter. Oh. Actually, the reason why my Foxy proxy is still on, I will explain that later. So enter again. Okay. So this is the website for the Bounty Hunter. Now going back to nmap, you've noticed that this is HTTP, meaning it is not secure. What it only means is all of the traffic going in and out of this website to your device is not encrypted using TLS or SSL. So it's in clear text. That's why, let me try to log in again to this one. Yep, it's better. That's why most oftentimes you will see this connection not secure. That's because, again, the connection is not encrypted. However, In certain cases, that even if the website is using HTTPS or encrypted HTTP, you will still see this for various reasons, such as the certificate is invalid, expired, or the CA is not trusted. Okay, now we're in the website of the Bounty Hunter. Since we're still in the initial scanning, let's just try to have a feel on the website. No, let's see if we can find anything useful here later. Okay. Didn't go anywhere. Let's try if this is something useful. Accent. From the looks of it, it doesn't go anywhere. It does give us a clue that we can use BurpSuite and use portal. Then we are redirected into the log submit.php. Let's try to see if this is actually working. Just random input, submit. From the looks of it, it does have some sort of connection to the backend because it has returned something. We could use this later in the later stage of our pen test, but for now, let's try to enumerate some more. Okay. The next thing that I will do is basically enumerate the directories that may be hidden from the front page. So Control-Shift-R in order to create a horizontal or rather vertical division. Control-Shift-D for horizontal division. Then Control-Shift-E to collapse them. First thing, if you're starting to use Kali Linux or you just installed it, try to first download the gobuster because this is what I'm going to use here. So sudo apt-get install gobuster. Once it's done, just press yes, yes, then you're good to go. So -help. So these are the available main commands for the gobuster. gobuster can enumerate directory or file. It could enumerate subdomain. It could even be used for fuzzing. We're going to use the dir. So clear gobuster. Now we see more sub commands for dir. We're going to use specifically the -x for extension. What it means is we could specify which extensions to return. We'll only specify the commonly used extension for websites. Then we have -u for the target URL. That would be the IP address of Bounty Hunter. Then the word list. The word list is, as the name suggests, is just a list of words. You can find it here, user, share, word list. Okay. These are the list of words that the gobuster would append into the IP address. Random words such as login.php, index.php, whatever. And it would check if it got some sort of response to it, maybe a 200 OK, a 300 redirect. Now, this is the location of the word list. These are the different repository for your word list from different tools. We have Metasploit, Dirtbuster. This is what we will be using today. So ls user word list. We're going to be using this one specifically. So again, we're going to check what's inside that text. Again, it's just basically a list of words. Just a quick sample. The gobuster would take, for example, this random word, copy, and then append it to the URL, and then add the extension. So you can see 404 not found. So what we will do to this random word is instead of outputting it into our gobuster, we would actually forward it to /dev/null, which is like a trash bin, so that it won't flood up our screen. Basically, what we want is just to output everything that's useful. Clear this out, clear this out. Now for the syntax, gobuster, we want to enumerate the directory. We want to specify the extensions only to those who are commonly used on websites, such as HTML, CSS, maybe JavaScript if you want, PHP, JSON, and XML. Specify the IP address of our target, which is the IP address of the BountyHunter machine. Specify the location of the word list. So that would be, again, user, share, word list, BurpSuite, directory, list. Again, this is what I'm talking about earlier, that we want to forward all error outputs. This basically mean error string, the 2 greater than sign, to dev/null. The dev/null is like a black hole for your outputs. I'm going to run this. Then on the right side, I'm going to check for any vulnerabilities for that website. I'm going to use nikto, then -8 for host, specify the IP address, then wait for it. Now for the gobuster, you've noticed that it found resources. And going back into the main page, there's no resources linked. We cannot go to resources with this front page. That's why we need to enumerate its directories, because it could provide us some sort of clues. Oh, shit. So we could try to access that. And we got subdirectories. A file. Can I use this? Currently, this could be a potential account. Now going back to nmap, we have an SSH, so we could try that account. SSH allows us to connect to our machine and open some sort of terminal to it. Then SSH. This is the basic syntax. SSH, the username, at the IP address of the target. So we don't have any password, I believe. Let's try to look. Yep. This is interesting, actually. From the looks of it, we don't have any password. So let's move on for now. And just add that to our notes. That this could be a potential user later. Potential user found under resources. I think that was MD. Oh, then what we did is list the directories using gobuster. While waiting for the response, let's try to check db.php. It looks like it has 800 OK, but there's no size specified. There's nothing in here, but it could only mean that it could be encrypted or we don't have any permission to it. Let's try assets. Okay. From the looks of this could be the portal.php that we have seen earlier. Go back to the main page, portal, or rather the log underscore submit. So exploit title, CWE, CVSS. This is an XML form. What this means is we could try to check if this is vulnerable to XML injection or XXE. So search XXE GitHub, check for available payloads that we could use later if ever it is vulnerable to XML injection. So this allows us to exploit that vulnerability to provide such as files, directories, credentials. I'm going to try later the file disclosure and the access control bypass. But first we're going to check if it is indeed vulnerable. Going back into our output, let's try to copy this for a while. Copy. Paste. Okay. While waiting, we'll try to check if it's indeed vulnerable to XML injection using BurpSuite. What we're going to do is we're going to intercept this traffic and try to check if it's vulnerable to XML injection. Before you can use BurpSuite, you need to download Foxy Proxy. All you have to do is type in Foxy Proxy. And then the first link, make sure it is add on Mozilla, not Google Chrome. And then add it to Firefox. Obviously I have it now, that's why it's removed here. Once you're done, it will show up on the upper right corner. Click Options, click Add, put in a title, maybe BurpSuite. Specify the IP address of the loopback. ifconfig. 99% of the time that would be 127.0.0.1. This would be it. But if you're unsure, you could always use ifconfig. 7.0.0. I'm going to use port 8080. What the Foxy proxy would do is like a pack file. It would instruct Mozilla Firefox to forward all of your browser traffic to this IP address and to this port, rather than forwarding it to the original destination. So this would actually be the BurpSuite. What Foxy Proxy would do is forward all of your traffic to BurpSuite so that we could actually intercept it, modify it, and everything. Click Save, but I already have one. What I'm gonna do is click OK and try to open BurpSuite. It's already pre-installed in your Kali Linux, so don't worry. While waiting, we could try to add, we cannot. Okay, we'll just populate this for now. Nikto find db.php interesting, so we can actually check that out later. Okay, maybe for now we could just copy this, add it here. Going back to BurpSuite, I know it might look intimidating, but let's remove this and go to proxy. Make sure intercept is on, so that would be in listening mode. So after that, what the Foxy proxy would do is forward this request to BurpSuite instead of directly forwarding it to 10.10.11.100. From there, we could modify the data first before we could actually forward it and check if it's vulnerable to XML injection. Click submit. You can see we have some sort of data in here. And this is a post. Because then we're going to send this to repeater. You can also click Control R, repeater. Repeater allows us to basically send and have the response, send again and have the response easily. We're going to check the data. And again, this data is the same as this one. It's in XML. So we will try to modify this. Yep, that's why we can forward it. Because again, it's being intercepted by BurpSuite. This is the same. The next website we're going to visit is CyberChef. CyberChef. This would allow us to convert to base64 easily. So we could just simply insert it into the data variable. Okay. Copy the decoded version. Output and to base64. How do I know this? Is decoded from base64. This hash is decoded from base64. This is the same output as this one, the highlighted one. Okay. Now we're going to check if we're able to inject some sort of XML data into this page. So doc type, place. Okay. You could actually just use this one. You try to just copy this one and paste it there. So make sure you could change something here to some sort of output. So that would start and end, and whatever you entered after entity out, don't forget the semicolon. So what we're expecting is actually to output the vulnerable string into this part of the XML. If it does, that means the page log_submit is vulnerable to XC. To copy the output, go back to BurpSuite, paste, highlight it again, and make sure to convert or encode it, and then send. So again, we are expecting that we should change the reward from $1 million to vulnerable. Let us confirm, going back to our notes, confirm that the vulnerable to XML injection or XC. There, we'll try to access the password file. Going back to Mozilla Firefox. Going to ask for a file now, not just that basic string. We're expecting that page to return us the password file. So we just add system, or so that this would be easier for you guys, we just copy this whole thing and modify it a bit. Yeah. And whatever you place here, that's basically the output. So we change this to out. We're going to specify password. Now, what does that mean? So we're going to ask this page, root etc your password. We're going to ask for this one. So we're expecting this output. And then we're going to look for some sort of credentials or anything useful for that matter. Correct me if I'm wrong. The reason why we have triple slashes here is normally resources on a website is stored in var, www, and then HTML. So that's why we need to traverse 3 levels, first slash, second slash, and third slash. And then we would go to etc and then password. That's why. So currently, I think it looks like this. Again, correct me if I'm wrong. Some sort of resource here. So we want to traverse 3 levels so that we could get to the root. Then we could input etc, then password. Again, we're expecting this output. Looks good. Let's try to copy again the base64 output. Back to BurpSuite. Paste. Paste. Don't forget to encode again. So convert selection URL. You could also click Ctrl U. Send. Again, this is the same output as this one. So we're trying to look for user. You can see we have a user here. This is the UID. So we're going to try to look for 1000 UID and maybe a home. That will be our user. Going back to BurpSuite. This is a potential user, 1000 development. That would be the same as mine. Okay. So we now have a username, development. The problem is we only have a single variable into our equation. We don't have the password yet. Going back into our notes, going to add that. The file disclosure. So we used this one and found a user. Try to SSH. It's asking for a password. We don't have that yet. And going back to the output of nikto, says here that db.php is actually interesting. So let's try to check if you can actually use one of these payloads to request for db.php. I can see PHP example. We could use this one and then change things up a little bit. Let's copy this again. Let's just try PHP. Output or out. Then what we're going to change is the resource. I'm going to change it to db.php. That's what we're trying to request. Again, same process, copy the output hash, go back to BurpSuite, move this, paste, try to send it back to code it, and then send. So we have a response actually. This is again some sort of hash. Could use CyberChef to convert it back to some sort of human readable format. Okay, copy, remove this. So instead of to base 64, we're going to use from base 64 because that is in hash and we got an output. Let's first copy this, go back to our notes. Okay, from the looks of this is from a database. So we now have a password and a username. We can try first using the admin and then this password combination. Then we could try to use development. Okay, so admin, copy this, Control Shift C, then going to try to SSH using admin at the IP address. Try to V. Doesn't work, so we're going to try development as the user. And voila, we're logged in. So cat, try to check what's inside, cat user text. Oh. We now have our user flag. Username is development. Password is this one. Gained access to the machine using SSH. Now we're going to do privilege escalation. Back to this one. We can actually remove these tabs. Clear. Ah. Let me just edit something. So I got something wrong. Then, okay. Let's try to check what's in here. So ID the 1000. So contract text. In validation, I need to figure out why I set a permission for you to test this. So there should be some sort of program or command that we could use that has good privilege. So we could use sudo -l and see that we could actually execute or run the ticket validator.py using Python 3.8 as root. We could actually use to exploit this in order to gain the privilege of being root. So first things first, empty, and let's Okay, permission denied. It's clear that this user doesn't have any root access. Okay. We're going to try to see what's inside the source code of ticket validator.py. So cat opt skytrain, and okay, this source code basically tells us that, or rather tells us the format when creating a ticket. So the format or the file name should end with .md. The first line should have this one. So from the looks of it, this could be a sample code. And then second line would be this one. Third line would be this one. Again, correct me if I'm wrong, but from what I understood in this line, that your ticket code should be, after dividing by 7, should have a remainder 4. Okay. What we will do actually is append something in that ticket that could allow us to create a shell on a root privilege. So let's go first to temp, and we'll try to create a ticket called ticket.md. First, it needs to have a .md extension. The first line in the ticket should be this. Second line should read this. Third line should be this one. The fourth line should start with this, and again, it needs to be, it needs to have a remainder 4 after dividing by 7. So let's try this one. And we'll append a command that would allow us to create a shell. So os.system bin path. So hopefully this ticket would actually work. Let me double check. Yep. Let's write this one. Okay. Sudo-l. So we need to run the ticket validator.py using Python 3.8, not just Python 3. So the current location of Python 3.8 is under user bin. You could actually double check that using the which command, Python 3.8. There you go. I think Python 3 is also installed here. So again, we need to use Python 3.8. We need to specify that in order to gain that root privilege. So sudo, the location of Python, because this is in Py or Python, going to run this, bin Python 3.8. I'm going to run the ticket validator.py. So specify the location first. Okay, took a while. And then we're going to specify the location of our ticket.md, which is in temp. So the temp, the file name, md. Again, we now have root privilege. How do we check this? Use ID should have 0. The ID should have 0. So from there, we could actually try to go to the root directory. This is the root directory. And try to access maybe root folder, because most of the time this is where the flag is stored. ls. There we go. Oh, we just gained our root flag. So just a quick recap on what we did. We found that we can run ticket validator .py using Python 3.8, specifically with root privileges. We also created a ticket with the correct format and appended a command that would create a shell. So that's it, guys. We got the root flag and the user flag. So that's the end of this box. So just a quick summary so that we could cement this. We'd use nmap for scanning of open ports, and we found that they have a web server running because this is in port 80 and HTTP. Then we check for additional directories that are hidden. We check for the resources, and we found the log underscore submit.php, which is in XML. We check if it's vulnerable to XML injection, which it is. And we use the file disclosure. Then we found the username development. And going back to nikto, we found out that db.php might be interesting. So we use access control bypass, XML injection, and we got this credential. So we got the development and the password. We SSH to the machine, got the user flag, and we did privilege escalation. Using the ticket validator.py, we created our own ticket in the correct format, added a command that would create a shell so that when we ran that ticket validator.py using 3.8 Python, it would provide us a shell in the root level. So that's pretty much it with BountyHunter machine. Guys, I hope you guys enjoyed that, and thank you.